You've been told for years, cut the salt to lower your blood pressure. But here's the truth, salt isn't the only culprit. In fact, for everyday foods, some even labeled healthy, are quietly wrecking your heart. I've seen patients skip salt completely, and still land in the ER. Why? Because they missed the real threats hiding in plain sight. So if you're over 60 and still battling high blood pressure, this might change everything. Quick question, what's one healthy food you're not so sure about anymore? Drop it in the comments. And now, it's time for the intro. 3, 2, 1. It was a rainy Tuesday afternoon in Millbrook, a quiet town nestled in the Midwest, when Robert Jensen walked into my clinic. 67, retired auto mechanic, widower, stubborn as a mule, Robert had been coming to see me for over a decade. That day, he sat down with a puzzled look, unfolded his notebook, and said, "Doc, I've done everything you told me. Low-sodium soups, no table salt, and I take my meds like clockwork. So why the heck is my blood pressure still acting up?" I leaned back in my chair, took a deep breath, and replied gently, "Robert, what if the issue isn't just salt? What if there are other things in your meals, things you don't even realize, pushing your pressure up?" He blinked, confused. And he's not the only one. I've seen this same frustration on the faces of dozens of patients in their 60s, 70s, even 80s. People who try their best, cutting back on salt, following their doctor's orders, yet still can't seem to get their numbers down. Here's what I've learned after 30 years as a cardiologist, some of the biggest threats to your blood pressure are things no one talks about. Not because they're hidden in some exotic food, but because they're right there in the everyday items we trust, cans, bottles, spreads, even diet options. You won't see a salt shaker next to them, but they can quietly strain your heart just the same. So in this video, I want to pull back the curtain and show you 4 surprising ingredients that could be silently keeping your blood pressure high, even if you barely touch salt. These are things I wish every patient over 60 knew. Because once you see them, you'll understand how much control you actually have, not just over your numbers, but over how strong and steady your heart can be. This isn't a guilt trip. You won't hear me scolding or blaming. This is about understanding what's been overlooked, and finally getting the full picture. My goal is simple, to help you eat smarter, not stricter, and give your heart a break it truly deserves. So whether you're managing hypertension, supporting a loved one who is, or simply curious about what else could be hiding in your pantry, you're in the right place. Let's walk through this together, because the smallest shifts in awareness can lead to the biggest changes in health. Robert's story opened the door, but it wasn't long before my mind jumped to someone else, Linda Marshall. 70 years old, retired librarian, glasses always slightly tilted, always carried a canvas tote full of health magazines. Linda had been trying so hard. She'd show up to our appointments with a proud smile, saying things like, "No salt added, doc. I switched to low-sodium chicken this week." And I believed her, until her numbers crept higher and higher. One day I asked her to bring a few of her pantry staples with her. She reached into that tote bag and handed me a can of low-sodium chicken chunks. The label looked harmless enough at first glance. But when I turned it over and read the ingredients, my stomach turned: sodium phosphate, monosodium glutamate, MSG, disodium inosonate. "Linda," I said gently, "you've been avoiding the salt shaker, but these ingredients are squeezing your arteries like a vice." She looked stunned. "But the front says, heart smart," she protested. That's the trap. We think we're making the right choice, but food companies know how to hide the danger behind comforting labels. These preservatives and flavor enhancers don't just irritate your body, they constrict blood vessels, raise fluid retention, and force your heart to work overtime. It's like trying to walk uphill with a weight vest you never knew was there. Then there was Fred Miller. 65, former high school football coach, still wore a whistle around his neck like it was part of his DNA. After his diagnosis, Fred gave up regular sodas. I remember how proud he was. No more sugar, doc. I drink only the diet stuff now. But every visit, his blood pressure stayed stuck in the red zone. One day, we talked longer than usual. I asked about his daily routine. Just 1 or 2 diet sodas. Okay, maybe 3. And sometimes a power-up or 2 when I'm working in the yard. That's when it clicked. He'd traded sugar for a new set of problems, artificial sweeteners and stimulants. Aspartame, found in many diet drinks, can affect the way your body handles stress signals. Caffeine adds another layer, jacking up your nervous system, speeding your heart rate and tightening your arteries. Fred, I said, your heart's not getting a break. It's stuck in game day mode 24/7. He chuckled, but then got quiet. I thought I was doing better. It's a common misunderstanding. Just because something says 0 calories doesn't mean it's 0 risk. A different kind of mistake came from Gregory and Margaret, a couple married 42 years, still holding hands during checkups. They took pride in cooking all their meals at home. No takeout, no frozen dinners. I was impressed, until I noticed Gregory's LDL cholesterol and blood pressure creeping up. I asked what kind of oil they used for cooking. Oh, just canola or vegetable oil. Whatever's cheapest at the store. My heart sank a little. Those oils, while common, are heavily refined and often high in omega-6 fatty acids, which promote inflammation in the blood vessels. Chronic inflammation makes artery walls stiffer, less flexible, meaning your heart has to pump harder to push blood through. It's like trying to blow air through a kinked hose. Gregory looked surprised. But we thought those were the healthy options. They're what everyone uses. Exactly. That's the problem. We've normalized these oils without realizing how industrial they are. The Gregorys weren't lazy or careless, they were doing what most families do. But sometimes, the biggest risk is the thing we never even question. Finally, Sandra Jones. A quiet woman, 72, widowed for over a decade. She lived alone in a little yellow house on Maple Street. She rarely cooked anymore. It's just me, she'd say. I usually toast some bread, fry an egg, and maybe have a cookie or 2. No veggies, no fruits. I asked her how often she ate greens or bananas. She looked at me blankly. I don't really like produce. Too much prep. That day, I showed her a simple diagram of how potassium helps balance sodium, how it literally helps your kidneys flush out excess salt and keep your blood pressure stable. You don't need fancy superfoods, I told her. Just a little spinach, a sweet potato, maybe an avocado now and then. Without enough potassium, your body holds onto sodium like a sponge, and that leads to swelling, fatigue, and yes, rising blood pressure. It's a nutrient we talk far too little about. For Sandra, it wasn't just about food, it was about routine, loneliness, and lack of energy. Sometimes poor nutrition isn't about ignorance, it's about isolation. These 4 stories may sound different, but they share the same root, people trying their best but being let down by labels, habits, and half-truths. That's why it's so important to look beyond just sodium. Because blood pressure isn't a simple salt problem, it's a systems problem. And fixing it means unlearning what we thought we knew. After uncovering so many hidden traps in my patients' routines, the next question always followed, so what should I do instead, doc? And that's where the real work begins. Because managing blood pressure isn't just about saying no, it's about making smarter choices that support your body every day, without turning every meal into a math problem or every grocery trip into a research project. So let me walk you through 4 changes that I've seen work, not in theory, but in real lives. Let's start with something small that makes a big difference, learning how to read food labels properly. Most people glance at the sodium content and call it a day. But the number of milligrams isn't the full story. You also need to pay attention to what kind of sodium is in there. Take 3 seconds to scan the first 3 lines of the ingredient list. If you see anything like monosodium glutamate, MSG, sodium phosphate, sodium benzoate, disodium inosonate, sodium nitrate, that's a red flag. These are not just salt, they're chemical additives that interfere with your blood vessels, your kidneys, even your nervous system. I remember walking a patient named Glenn through this. He was 74, used to do accounting, so label reading appealed to him. Treat it like reading a budget, I told him. Just because something's low on one line doesn't mean it's not costing you somewhere else. He started keeping a small magnifying glass in his wallet, just for labels. 6 months later, his systolic pressure dropped by 15 points, with no extra medication. Next, let's talk about drinks. We often think food is the main enemy, but what we sip all day matters just as much. A lot of older patients tell me they don't drink soda anymore, and that's great. But then they reach for something else: sports drinks, bottled teas, flavored water with sweeteners. These often sneak in caffeine, artificial colors, and chemical sweeteners like aspartame or sucralose, which can disrupt how your brain and body regulate blood pressure. Let me introduce you to Carol. She's 68, a retired music teacher with a voice like honey and a laugh that fills the room. But behind that cheerfulness was a serious struggle with hypertension. She loved her morning energy fizz and afternoon hydration tea, both of which had enough caffeine to keep a college student awake. After a long talk, she agreed to try something different. We landed on 2 alternatives: unsweetened coconut water and a mild herbal tea made from licorice root and hibiscus. At first she was skeptical. "It's not very exciting," she said. But after 3 weeks, her blood pressure was more stable than it had been in over a year, and she even started sleeping better. "Turns out I didn't need more energy," she laughed. "I needed less chaos." Now for the oils. Remember the Gregorys from earlier? The couple who cooked every day but used the wrong oils. When I explained how canola and soybean oils are highly refined, chemically extracted, and pro-inflammatory, they were shocked. So I guided them through better options: extra virgin olive oil and grass-fed ghee. These are fats that support your arteries, not attack them. Olive oil contains polyphenol that reduce inflammation, and ghee, clarified butter, is packed with fat-soluble vitamins and omega-3s when sourced properly. I told them to look for a few things. Olive oil should come in a dark glass bottle, say, cold-pressed, and have a harvest date if possible. Ghee should be golden and firm at room temperature, with no added ingredients. I gave Margaret a simple recipe for sautéed greens with garlic and a touch of lemon, cooked in ghee. Gregory's words still make me smile: "It tastes like food from my grandmother's kitchen." Small switch, huge impact. Within 4 months, his labs improved and his energy was better than it had been in years. Lastly, we need to talk about potassium, not in the form of pills, but from food. This mineral is a direct counterbalance to sodium. It helps your body flush out excess salt and relaxes the walls of your blood vessels. And yet, most seniors barely get half of what they need. One of the best things you can do: build your day around foods rich in potassium. I helped Sandra, my patient who lived alone, design a one-day menu she could handle without too much fuss. For breakfast, mashed avocado on whole grain toast with a sprinkle of flax seeds. For lunch, a warm sweet potato soup, easy to reheat and gentle on the stomach. For dinner, sautéed spinach and mushrooms with a small portion of grilled salmon or tofu. "I can do this," she said with a smile. And she did. In just 1 month, we saw a significant drop in both her systolic and diastolic pressure, not dramatic, but steady, sustainable. These 4 steps: reading beyond the sodium line, changing your drinks, switching your oils, and boosting potassium, aren't radical. They're not trendy or expensive. But they work. And more importantly, they last. They empower you to understand your body instead of fearing it. That's what I tell every patient: you're not helpless. You just need the right tools. And if there's one thing I hope you take from this video, it's that your kitchen can become your medicine cabinet, or your battlefield. The choice is in the details. After all these stories, Robert, Linda, Fred, the Gregorys, Sandra, and Carol, what stays with me most isn't their numbers on a chart. It's the quiet confusion in their eyes when they realized they had done everything right, yet their health kept slipping. And it's not because they failed. It's because we've been taught to chase the wrong enemy. We've made salt the villain of every dinner table conversation. And yes, excess sodium plays a role. But high blood pressure isn't just a salt problem, it's a system problem. It's about how our food is processed, how our choices are guided by labels that often mislead more than inform, and how we've normalized habits that quietly hurt us. So here's what I want you to remember: less salt doesn't always mean safer. Less inflammation does. Less artificial chemistry. Less strain on your blood vessels. It's not just about the white crystals in a shaker, it's about the chemical cocktail hidden in that healthy canned soup or that zero-calorie drink. When you start paying attention to what else is on the label, when you start asking, what is this made of? That's when you start gaining control. The second key is just as powerful: potassium isn't optional. It's your body's natural defense against sodium overload. It's like a peacekeeper for your circulatory system. And yet, so many older adults don't even come close to getting enough. A few bites of sweet potato, a handful of spinach, half an avocado, these aren't fancy diet tricks. They're everyday shields against strokes, fatigue, and heart strain. I've said this in the clinic many times, and I'll say it here too: you don't need to change your whole life overnight. You just need to start with one meal. One swap. One choice. And keep building. Because blood pressure doesn't rise in a day, and it doesn't fall in a day either. But it does respond to your choices, especially the quiet, consistent ones. So the next time you reach for something at the store or plan your dinner, don't ask, is this low in salt? Ask, is this low in stress for my heart? That's a better question. And it leads to better health. When I sit across from my patients, what I see most often isn't pain, it's fear. Not the kind that shouts, but the quiet kind. The kind that creeps in when you start feeling like your body is slipping away from you. Like you're losing control one heartbeat at a time. And that fear? It's real. I've seen it in the way Robert clutched his blood pressure readings. In the way Sandra looked away when I asked about vegetables. In the way Linda kept defending her healthy choices with a nervous smile. They weren't just confused. They were scared. Scared that they were doing everything they could, and still falling behind. But here's what I want you to hear: you don't have to overhaul your life to reclaim your health. You just need to begin. One choice. One swap. One label read a little more closely. One day when you drink tea instead of something that promises energy but steals your peace. The road to better blood pressure isn't paved with restriction, it's built on awareness. And once you begin, momentum builds. So if this message speaks to you, if it feels like I've just described your father, your spouse, or even yourself, I ask you this: don't keep it to yourself. Send this to someone you love. Someone who's trying their best but needs a little guidance. Someone living alone who maybe doesn't need another pill, but just needs someone who cares enough to help them shop a little smarter, cook a little better, or ask the right questions. Sometimes the most powerful medicine is presence. A gentle voice saying, "I thought of you when I saw this." And if you found even one moment in this video helpful, I invite you to subscribe to the channel. Not for me, but for you. Because every week, I'll keep sharing the quiet truths, the things no one talks about, but that could quite literally save your heart. Your heart doesn't speed up because of salt. It speeds up because of all the little things we forget to notice. So today, let's choose to notice. Let's give your heart something it rarely gets in this fast world: a moment of rest.